So my father said, no, he goes, it's not going to work that way. We spoke to a counselor. We have to send you to a detox place for 5 days. I wanted to punch my hand through the wall and throw like a fit like a little kid and say, are you serious? Out of all the people in the world, there's something you're going to pick me out, who's the straightest guy that you could come across? And then I pleaded with my dad, tried to play him against my mother, and said, Dad, you know, I mean, like, I don't even have sugar or soda. I said, I've never done that. And I said, I have legitimate reasons. And I just started rationalizing, and probably talking the addict talk that they do to try to convince people to get off their back so they could stay in their addiction. Pretty much my father started to get emotionally upset, and I just saw him do that. And I have no problem if he was ever yelling at me and stuff. He's my best friend, but when I saw him get emotionally worked up, like upset and hurt, that's when I gave in. And I said, you know what? You want me to go for you? I'll go for you. All right, fine. 5 days, I'll go. So where do we have to go? And my sister at that time was, involved, and she got some research off the internet of where to go, and we didn't even know like what to look for in a rehab or a detox or how to detox. But I guess she got one off of it, and it was called Five Winds. I believe it was upstate New York. Now, obviously, I'm still on the opiates, so I'm not. I feel healthy. I feel great, and it's not detoxed. So when you get detox, you go into a withdrawal, which I'll get into later. It was a nice, safe place. I don't know the amount of money it was because my father and my sister paid for it because I said, this is how much this is going to cost, and my thing was all about the money, and they knew that if they told me the amount of money, I wouldn't let them pay for it. I would figure out a way or try to go someplace cheaper. And so at my head, so I'm just going for them. They watched like too many 60-minute shows about people overdosing, and they didn't want to see their son, who they loved, die of an overdose. So I figured, all right, this is the least I could do for my family. 5 days is nothing, so I just actually chalked it up to it was like a jail sentence. I could do 5 days on my head. So put on my sweats, put on stuff, went up there, went in, and it was pretty much everybody was, I don't think there was anybody older than me. It was mostly like younger kids. And then there was a couple of instructors, and it was in a nice place, but you share rooms with a couple of their patients that are in there. And what they did, though, they gave me methadone as soon as I got there as a transition. So for the 5 days, they went in, they gave you methadone, and methadone is just like another opiate. It actually was awesome. I remember I was like, oh my God, I slept so great. The pain, and I didn't even have to go. There was supposed to be groups to get you better. They just doped me up with another medication. That methadone goes into your bones and is terrible. Coming down, crossing it actually off of like Shawshank Redemption. I'm trekking it off my sneaker each day. One day, 2 days. My parents would come up every day, make the drive, beautiful family, support, how's it going? I don't need to be here, I don't have a problem. But, I've only got like 3 days left. Now, the fifth day, they said, well, we got to change in plans. You're through your detox, and we're going to send you to Florida, this place called Renaissance. We really looked at it. This is what all the professionals have suggested to us because of the amount of medication you were on. And for you to kick this, you have to go in for at least 30 days. And I lost it. I was like, well, that's not our agreement. It was supposed to be 5 days. Like, tomorrow's going to be 5 days, right? I've only taken the meds they gave me. And that's it. So I got heated. I was acting like an ass. I was going through a big tantrum and stuff. But there was nothing I could say. So Finally, again, my will always breaks down when I see my mother cry or anybody get upset. So I said, fine, I'll go or whatever, pick me up tomorrow. This is bullshit and it's ridiculous, but if that's what you want me to do, and even though I'm a 30-year-old man, our family is so close, I'll turn into like a 7-year-old boy. I still do it to this age. If I'm 50 years old, if my father tells me to do something and I don't want to do it just because my dad says it, I'll follow him like a little kid, and I'll take his advice or whatever. I guess I don't know, whatever. It's stuck into my gene pool. He trained me well like a puppy. Now I told my sister, who was there with a girl I was dating at that point. And I said, this is bullshit. I said, what the hell? It's like, you guys think I'm going to commit suicide, or what do you think's going to happen? I'm not going to go home and take up like a bunch of pills. I'll just stop it and give me that opportunity. And if I happen to relapse or go back to it, I'll be up front and then we'll address it. Give me a chance to bring it, because I'm not an addict. I'm in a room with all these kids and I'm hearing they're smoking crack, they're injecting stuff. I don't identify with anybody here. I said, all I do is, I don't know how much we're paying for this place, but all I'm doing is they're giving me one drug to replace another drug so I could sleep better that night to pass the 5 days. So they're like, just go. So my sister, who cares a lot about me, we're kind of like oil and water, but at the same time, if we need each other, we'll we'll break down walls to get to each other. But we can't really hang out in the same room. We're too different. They leave, and I'm up in my room, and it's at nighttime, and I'm sleeping, and I know I got to go the next day to Florida, which I'm very upset about for 30 days. But again, I just I put up for some reason, and I never been to jail. I put on this whole like jail attitude that it's a 30-day sentence. So I'm just going to take it as like a jail sentence. And if I'm in with a knucklehead and somebody does it, I'll handle things my way. Or they have like orderlies and nurses and stuff. And a lot of the people, unfortunately, with the addiction issues, have a lot of mental health issues as well. Because when you have mental health issues, which now is my story is coming out, was probably triggered by the traumatic injury, which was not, I don't know if I had the post TBI at that point in CTE, but maybe that was the beginning of CTE, even though I didn't have the symptoms, but maybe that was, that we don't know yet. So, but usually anybody who's an addict or an alcoholic is self-medicates. And so you'll have mental health patients. And it wasn't like a hospital or a mental ward where it was like one flew over the cuckoo's nest, where it was people in straitjackets or anything like that. But you had some people that had definitely mental health issues. And that was a little bit scary for me. So, I mean, I've had guns put to my head and some challenging moments when I was doing security work and some of the nightclubs and stuff and scary incidents. And that doesn't scare me, but being in a room with somebody that's like you see somebody in a mental ward, that is kind of like scary. So I'm laying in bed, and all of a sudden, this woman comes busting in the room, and she grabs me, she checks my wrist, and she checks my stuff, and she's like, Paolo, what did you do? And I thought it was like a dream. I just woke up. And she's like, we just got a call. You're trying to commit suicide from your sister. And I was like, no, you've got to have the wrong patient. I was like, I'm leaving tomorrow, and I'm still half asleep, groggy. And they're convinced that I'm going to commit suicide. So, and that's nothing to joke around, especially when you're in a place like this, because they do have people that can't handle the detox. They walked me downstairs, and I said, this got to be a mistake. So I called my sister, and my mother and father were still at my sister's house for some reason. And I said, what's going on? And I was like, you told them I was going to commit suicide? I was like, God. And I snapped. I slammed the phone down, and I just hung up. I said, that's it. I'm out of here. So I ran upstairs. I guess they called the nurses orderlies. These are the guys that when they have to deal with a psychotic episode of a patient, they bring in a bunch of guys so the patient doesn't hurt themselves, and also the workers don't get hurt. So I immediately knew what was already going to happen because I think on my second night, somebody had a real fit. A poor kid who was like only like 19 years old wanted to leave and he couldn't leave. And they just grabbed him and they threw him in like a rubber room so he didn't hurt himself. And they called his parents. And so I threw on a bunch of sweats and put a towel around my neck, around my head, put my hoodie up, grabbed a bunch of toilet paper, and which probably is not helping my case of showing that I have my sanity, but I'm ready for a fight. Thank God the two male nurses knew that a little bit about my background and that I can handle myself. So I put toilet paper underneath my thing because I figured they're going to be coming in with like, like mace or tear gas and try to push me up against the wall. So I had about probably like 6 or 7 guys on each side and they're calling in the door and I had the door stopped. Now, the bad part is I did feel terrible about, I had 2 other patients that were in the room with me and they were scared to death, which how they saw this, all of a sudden me turn into a beast. And I have a lot of love, but then I could flip a switch. And when I flip a switch, it could be kind of scary. So I do have that inner rage that I can release, but it doesn't come out too often. So I have my hood up. I have toilet paper under it, and I tuck it in like a mouthpiece, and I'm ready to go. So I strap in. I put on like 3 sweatshirts, so I figured I could take anything type of beans, put my sneakers on, double lace them up. And I said, all right, we're going to go. We're going to go. If you guys are going to bring it this way, we have 2 ways to handle this. I will not hurt any of you as long as you do not put your hands on me. If you put your hands on me, the first one that puts their hands on me is going to lose an arm, and then you're going to lose other pieces of your body. And thankfully, the one nurse who knew about me and some of the people I used to spar with was a big boxing fan. And again, I'm not trying to proclaim myself as a boxer or a tough guy, but it was just one of the things I did during college. So I was not a UFC fighter or an MMA fighter or a tough guy. I always consider myself a punching bag because I have respect for those high-end fighters and what they do. So now they don't know what to do because the nurses who are in the gear that are supposed to wrap me up and put me in the room, they're scared to come after me. I immediately, and I'm kind of street smart, so I stepped out and I slowly step and I take 1 step and I already know the exit route that I got to go. So every time I took a step, they took 1 step back and I just kept quiet. I walked down like it was yesterday, I remember, because I was like, this is going to be bad. And I didn't think I'd make it to the bottom of the steps. So I was immediately thinking about, all right, the biggest guy there. So it's like, that's the first one I'm going to get in the throat. So I come down, I walk down to the bottom of the stairs, get out to this exit, and I go straight through out to the back. Now, this is a place that's supposed to be safe that I'm at, so I'm in like freak zone. Immediately they come following me and they run and I'm looking like a maniac. I'm in all the sweats and then I spit the toilet paper out of my mouth so I can breathe. And I take off and I had wheels. So I'm running. They're trying to keep up with me. They can't keep up with me. And there's a barbed wire fence. It was like almost like a prison yard that kept people in. But because I was layered so hard, I was able to just spring up and hit the barbed wire, tear all the first layer of sweatshirt off, flip over, and then it went down to a ravine into the woods. And I still didn't know where I'd be at that point. So then they were like, F that, we're not going after him in the woods. So I come out, I hid, I see the flashlights. Now I feel like this is something out of a movie. I can't believe this is going on. But now I'm in the middle of someplace upstate New York. I have no idea where to go. So my head is, all right, let me call some of my friends in Manhattan, try to give them explanation. I know they'll come pick me up and they'll get it in. But where do I go? So I keep on just walking in one direction. Finally, I see a highway come up. Now the things going through my head is like, all right, well, if I'm driving, I see some madman in the middle of the road looking like Freddy Krueger. I said, I'm not going to pick him up. So thankfully, it was a state trooper. And the state trooper came, and I saw the look in his eyes and the look in my eyes. I put my hands up, put it down, put my hood down, and stood and tried to hold him down and wave him. And this is pitch black in the middle of nowhere. So I told him, he merely got out. He didn't know what to suspect. So he pulled his gun. He said, hands up. I said, my hands are up. I said, listen, I'm here. I'm in a drug rehab right up the road. You could check everything. I don't want to hurt anybody. I said, but there's been a huge mistake. I said, they think I'm going to commit suicide. I have no intention of committing suicide. The police officer, thank God, especially in today's time, how police officers are maybe be overreacting at different times. This police officer must have been well trained, and I did all the appropriate things on my end. And I talked to him, and he says, all right, I got to lock you up. He goes, I got to handcuff you. You're not going to cause me any problems. And officer, I just want to get to a safe place and get this story straight. So he handcuffed me behind my back, and he put me in the cell in this like small town area. I was in a single cell, so I wasn't with anybody. And they handcuffed my arm to the bar. Now, it probably took, obviously, after the incident happened, they must have immediately called my family. And now I'm a 30-year-old man, so they're calling my father, who's older. The poor man who just finished driving 2 hours coming back from the place, now has to turn around and come back. And he came back, and the first thing I just saw was his face looking at me handcuffed to the jail, look at it was. And I thought he was going to cry right there. And I told him, I said, what happened? And he was all mad at my sister. Obviously, the stress, I can't even imagine what they were going through at that time. They said, okay, well, you have to go back to the facility. And I was like, no way am I going back to the facility. So they said, yeah, you're going to go back. My father told me, he said, you got to man up. He says, go back, but you will get out tomorrow. You got to follow their rules. You can't put your hands on anybody. You can't act up. You got to do the right thing here. All right. And so now I got to go back to this place, and every patient is already up and out and looking for me like I'm a serial killer and real wackadoo, which I don't blame them for if I had to look at a scene like that. So they stripped me naked, and they put me in this rubber room and till the morning. And then they came and got me, and they didn't even let me go home. My parents came with a suitcase full of clothes. They took me right to the airport. We got out of the airport. We went down to Delray, Florida. I don't know if this place exists, but if it does exist, it should be shut down. The name of it is called Renaissance. And there, obviously, my parents again, and this is going to be a lesson learned, is do your research if you're looking for a program, which I believe it definitely can help. And sometimes, and 90% of the times, it'll save an addict's life. But they didn't do the research on it. I guess, I don't know how they got the ads, or they must have read a couple of good reviews. Most of the patients in there were real young adults, like kids right out of high school. There were delinquents and long-term drug addicts, and younger, and really having problems with authority and this and that. And I immediately got there, and they couldn't have been nastier. I mean, they go through your suitcase to make sure you're not bringing anything in, which I understand. They give me my room with like 4 guys, and already the word is spread out, and I have no idea, God, that I was the guy at 4 or 5 Wins Detox Center that tried to fight like all the security guys. So everyone thought I was like extra cuckoo. and this badass fighter. So, and which could be furthest from the truth. They sent me in, and I'm feeling now all the methadone is out of my system. So I'm starting to feel now is the first time I'm actually going into withdrawal. So I'm getting the sweats, I'm getting sick, just feeling terrible. I just want to lay down and go to sleep or just rest. But they immediately take you to a nighttime meeting, and their job is to keep you as busy as possible and almost brainwash you. But their philosophy is break you down as a man or a woman and rebuild you up in their image. And they kept on saying, like going around to people, and you would tell your stories, what's bothering you for the day, etc. They bring in this one guy who was supposedly in jail for like 7 or 8 years because he was a meth dealer and he was a biker and he had tattoos and he had like long hair, and he's like sitting screaming at the kids like a scared straight movie. And he's circling the room, and I'm just like, oh, please, I feel like shit. I was like, don't come to me. And he goes, who's my tough guy in here who just got in today? And no one knew who it was me, but you could always tell who's like the first person come in because every day they'd be bringing in a new patient. So he's there, and I guess he has a couple of his other biker friends that were sober. So his whole stance is to like kind of like scare you, and then he tells his story of how he got sober in prison and all the bad things he did and how he reformed his life and all this. And came across very preachy to me. It was and very ego driven. So I just like focused and my head down for a second. He said, "Yo," he's like, "Pablo," and I was like, "My name's Paolo," and he's like, "Don't talk back to me." And he says, "You're not home with your mama now." And I said, I said, "I think you got somebody mixed up, man. Just going to somebody. I'm not feeling too good. All right, can we start this tomorrow?" He then started to like try to push my buttons. You were the one from Five Wins, right? So he goes, "Oh, you think you're pretty tough? You think how you think you would handle it in jail?" I said, "I don't know. I don't think I'd ever put myself in that situation. Go to the next guy." So then he pushed my buttons again, and then I just mad dogged him, and I just didn't take my eyes off him, and I just looked at him. He just moved on to the next person, but for the rest of the 45 minutes, I did not break eye contact, and now I could tell. You can always tell a tough guy from a punk. So he started then getting nervous that my eyes, I just wanted to just rip them apart. Every time he kept them coming back, I wanted to, oh shit, I think I messed with the wrong dude. That's my first experience went there. And then they wanted me to say I was an addict, and I said I'm not an addict. I said I think I let the pill self-medication take control of me, but I think I got it under control, and I would just like that opportunity to continue with my business that I wanted to get off the ground. And they didn't want to have it. So I'm mad dogging him. I'm like, I'm going to get this guy. I'm going to wait one day. I'm going to cross paths with him alone so I won't get in trouble. And and that's how my mind, because I was in so much pain. But now what the problem is if you have a son or daughter or yourself goes into a detox, this is a note I could give you, is make sure you get through your detox before you go into a rehab, because I'm in the rehab now and I'm not detoxed. I'm coming off, yeah, I might have been off the oxys, but I'm still coming off the second methadone that's in the bone, which is twice as hard, and I feel twice as sick. It's just, I'm throwing up every other minute. I feel like it's the worst flu you could possibly have. So, and it's just, they get you up in the morning. They want you to walk like 2 miles, this regimen. Plus two, I'm not sleeping. It keeps you on a cycle where you're just wide awake. So I'm in this insomnia state, not sleeping, don't have any problem. I have roommates there and they're kids and so I just stayed to myself, and I checking off on my sneakers, and then all of a sudden knocking on the door comes the biker guy. And I was like, all right, I was like, this is going to be good, and it was a little bit of a weird, even though I felt so sick, I thought I'd get a little bit of energy out and anger. So he comes in, he's like, sits down, he's like, hey, dude, I'm so sorry I had to act like that, you know, and he puts on this total fake puss, and he was just a piece of shit. He was just total like a con artist, and that was his whole routine. And but you don't deal with everybody. Every addict is different. Every alcoholic or anybody in dependence issues. And what I want to try to get across is we're not all bad people. This is a disease. And to me, if someone really would have reached out to me differently and came to me with love or like a psychologist and really just talked me through problems, what triggered it, I mean, a whole mess would have been relieved, I believe. And so it's just like anything, like fixing a car. There's a lot of different ways, but you really got to know the person. So I recommend for myself that if I had to do it over again, I would have went to a psychologist, broke down the barriers so I would have been in a safe setting, been hopefully truthful, and going back and then went into that. But if you do it, you go into it, make sure you go to a real good detox center, are completely clean so your mind is clean, so then you can work the rehab appropriate based on it and know what you're getting into, know what their program is. There's so many ones. There's some that are faith-based. There's other ones that are holistic-based. Eric Clapton, I believe, has one that is, has his own theory on how to stay sober. So really do your research, because if you're going to invest that money and that time, they don't have a high success rate. They usually have a lot of people that repeat themselves, and come back. But I would say, like, if you make an investment in anything, you want to get a return on that investment. So do your homework, But I guess with the drug crisis, the doctors have to act quick because they're worried about somebody, I guess, depending on how long they've been using in their history, is that if you take too long, the kid or the person themselves is going to make a run for it because they don't want to get sober. That was not a case in my matters, in my mind. If you would have talked to me, I would have said, okay, let's figure out a strategy, and I won't pick up the pills. I won't be paying. And remember, at that point, I didn't know I was also treating the trauma in my head, the mental health issues that were starting. So it wasn't just the physical pain. So they didn't even address that. Thought I was only taking it from my back. Then, so now we're at the point, and so this rehab, I made it to 28 days, and they were just busting my balls every single day. Excuse my language. So they were constantly trying to break me down and break me down, break me down. And I'm a Taurus. I'm very stubborn. And if you come at me with love and compassion and talk to me as a human being, I'm a lot easier to get along with, and I do have common sense, but I guess everyone tries to hustle them. So they have a difficult job on their hands. It was on the 28th day. One of the guys he was a really hillbilly. He was a big boy. He said he played football, big time football, and he was just pushing my buttons. And I was like, dude, I said, what are you doing? I'm in here as a volunteer. I said, I'm not, because some of the kids were in there because to avoid prison sentences. I said, why are you on my stuff? I said, do you think you scare me? What are we going to do this? And again, it's going back to violence. And so they said I was almost like a sociopath or something like that. And they started putting all these weird labels on me. And I'm like, oh my God. I was like, you don't know anything about me. I'm not getting treatment. I'm not getting any of the things that I thought I was going to be getting, like one-on-one therapy or deep stuff to figure out why I'm doing this or answers. I had no idea what going into rehab had to offer and what it had, what you could gain, and picking a good one or a bad one. So that's my experience going into a rehab. Now, so when I left, I left early, so I could have made it 2 more days. But by intervention, I just packed up my stuff. Instead of this guy was baiting me to get into a confrontation. So I thought it was a scam because they house people there, the patients, and then they put them in halfway houses that the owners do. and it's a scam. So they told me I was only going to be there 30 days. And he says, no, you're going to be here for about another 4 to 5 months, and you're going to be in a halfway house. And it just made me flip. I was like, no way. I said, were you changing the rules again? I said, I'm out of here, because now I've already went through my detox, really bad stuff. Didn't learn a thing. They want me to stay and move into a halfway house, get a job at like bagging groceries, and really humble myself and build my way. I was like, I got a life to go, man. Every time is my most precious commodity, and I always say that today. So I'm here to move. So I'm like, I'm out of here. And he's baiting me, and he's like, because they know if I put hands on anybody, then they'll press charges, and then you got to stay there. So I just walked up, and I knew I actually had a PIN code for a phone. So they didn't think anybody could make phone calls unless you had change, because I wasn't allowed a wallet. So I called, left a message on the machine. Now I'm coming back and to the room to grab my suitcase and stuff, or grab some things, because they confiscated my suitcase. And I couldn't believe it. My father is right outside the door. And now he flew in from New York a couple days earlier, I guess because he had a sixth sense, and my mother's at the door. They see me, and this guy's there, and he's poking me like a bear. And my father sees us, and he's like, we're out of here. And my dad stood up for me. And I was like, thank God, he didn't push me, because he could tell this was not a good fit. So I don't know what happened, but my dad's a little bit like me, is a little bit of a hothead. So he said, you go with your mother, get in the car, and then I'll handle this stuff. So we went back to the hotel afterwards, and I didn't pick up another medication. I was scared straight, probably at 30 years old. And I said, all right, I won't do this again. So about 10 or 5, since my memory has been bothering me. I'm not too sure on exact dates, but I had a pretty much good amount of time clean, not touching anything, and that was very important. So I was coming home from my work in Manhattan. I was working in the nightclub scene. I get a call at 4 in the morning, and that's never good. And it's from my father, and he's at the hospital. He said, you got to come to the emergency room with us. I got to talk to you. Your mom's in the hospital. I'll talk to you when you get here. And immediately anxiety and panic went through my body, because that's not good, especially if somebody's there at 4 in the morning. My father never bothered me on work nights. So I'm in I could pull up, and they come in, they tell her, they say they ran a bunch of tests, they couldn't figure it out. First they thought she had shingles, and then she was finally diagnosed with AML leukemia, which at that point in day and time was almost a death sentence. It was really bad. I was scared, I was angry, but I had this weird belief in me that I wasn't going to let her go. We were in the hospital for probably 2 years, or at least a year. And again, I'm sorry if I'm giving the wrong times, but that's not the important part. When we were in the hospital, we would take rotation shifts. My father was a Viking. He worked full time, and then I don't know when he slept. He would go straight there. My sister wasn't really emotionally stable enough to handle it. She had a newborn baby, so she couldn't put in the hours. But I stuck it out with my dad and did as much as I could to relieve him. They've been high school sweethearts, so they have a special bond. So even during some of the medications, when my mother would hallucinate or be real bad or be agitated, the only one that could really calm my mother down was my father. So it was almost like he was scared to leave at some time. But I was worried that the stay in the hospital and during her treatment, she went through rounds of chemo. She went through stem cell transplant. I thought I might actually lose my father due to a heart attack, because he was under so much stress. He had like bags of luggage. Looks like he didn't sleep in years. And of course, I went back to the house one night, and I was really dark. I don't really remember what was going through my head, but I went into the bathroom, and it was my parents' bathroom, and I saw all the prescriptions at the top shelf, and It was the weirdest thing. It was, again, I use the analogy of an angel and a devil. And it was like I just needed some relief. I didn't know the difference between physical pain and emotional pain. And without being preachy, is that's why I say, like, if any man or woman, but mostly any man that is a coward and ever verbally abuses their partner or puts hands on somebody, that's just as cruel and actually doing physical harm to somebody. So I was in so much pain. I could have totally gone through the day without doing taking a pill, but all of a sudden, all the withdrawal feelings that I went through years past, going through the rehabs, all that trauma I put my family through, that I made it promises. I swear I would never do it again. I was not an addict. I was not anything. All of that, it's like another human being popped out of me. And I reached in, took a handful of whatever pain medication was there. And as soon as I took it, it like gave me like Superman. I didn't even fall asleep. It gave me that lift, and I wish they would come up with a medication that was non-addictive and non-opiate. I told psychologists this before. I said, why can't they just come up with something, and they'll say, oh, we got Lexapro, antidepressants and stuff like that. But nothing ever works like this. This is that full calming feeling, and takes away all my stress, anxiety, fear. It takes away sadness. It took away everything. That's why I really would never judge. Now I have a totally that different outlook on people that I see down here in Florida. There's one of the places that I drive down to City Place. There's an area I have to go through, and there'll be like prostitutes, young girls that are just all strung out on heroin. My father would be like, how disgusting is that? What could make somebody go that way? And that's where I understand now that I'm an addict. I am no better than that girl or the young man that's taking a syringe and putting it in their needle, that steals from their parents. Here I am thinking that I'm a good man. I love kids. I want to help people. I always want to do the right thing. But the disease, and when you're in so much pain, I tried to explain this, and this is what we'll transition into with my father, because my father cannot understand addiction or dependency at all. He thinks it's willpower. He says, if I could, back in the day, drop 3 weight classes to be a state champion, and anybody that's ever starved themselves or, well, done it healthily or through competed and done something very challenging, how could you do that and just simply just not pick up a pill or pick up a drink? I still this day don't know the answer to that, but I think it is because when the pain is so bad, when I was in rehab, I heard that the alcoholics would drink aftershave or Listerine because there's a little bit of alcohol in it. And that blew my mind. I was like, wow, that person's really sick. I was like, you're going to drink cologne just to get it because you're an alcoholic? And that wasn't my drug of choice. But here I am judging this person, not understanding addiction and not understanding dependency. I am now stealing my mother's pain medication, who is on her deathbed. And I blocked out how low of a person has to be that person. But it just proves that it's a disease. I'm no better or worse. I'm not saying there's any excuse for it. I'm not judging it. It's terrible what I did. I'll probably always live with that guilt. And the guilt is one of the things that kept me pretty much dependent on this medication until my last go around, which was about 2.5 years ago, which I'll share with you now. So thankfully, I'll give you the short version. We made it through the hospital. I stopped the medication because I didn't want to. My parents were under enough pressure, and our family was under enough stress. I didn't want to out myself and tell them I was taking pain meds again. And so I went cold turkey on my own, but I titrated off it. It's too far for me to go back, and this is a little bit that's strange, and maybe anybody that's watching this might identify with it. When you go through withdrawal, and if it's especially off of opiates, if you go cold turkey, it's the worst feeling. It's the worst feeling you could possibly have. For me, you're so sick, you have diarrhea. I mean, just look at the symptoms. It's gross. And it lasts like 10 days. But every time you go through another withdrawal, and you go through again. So say you've relapsed 4 or 5 times. Each time the withdrawal gets worse and worse and worse. So that's another thing. So that you would think a rational human being would not relapse again, because if you kicked it, you would say, "Oh, I went through hell to get clean. I'm not going to go back there again." But that's where I think the disease attacks the brain, and it's a national crisis, as we know. I guarantee anybody watching this knows somebody that is suffering from this disease, but it has such a negative stigmatism, and it's so dirty. So many people are afraid to talk about it. And if I wasn't in the position I'm in, I probably wouldn't be as open as I'm at right now, because it would hurt my career. I mean, I told you I was a sports performance coach with kids, and if you knew I was a drug addict and dependent on opiates, I don't know if you would trust me working out with your kids. To get in a car and go down to the gym and go to the field and be a mentor where, and not really understand disease. I don't know if I would let somebody, because there's always that chance of relapse. So that was my point where I accepted I was an addict, and I lived with guilt. So now I was living with guilt that I wasn't opening up to anybody. I didn't share it with anybody. I went to a couple of meetings, but the meetings really didn't work for me. And that's not bashing anybody, because I don't care what method you do, whatever brings you peace and gets you to that place so you don't have your cravings. When you watch one of our upcoming podcasts with Hall of Famer and one of the super agent, Lee Steinberg, he talks about one of his addiction issues and what has saved his life, and it's made him 10 years sober. So that is an important podcast for anybody that's suffering from that. And he touches on his method that helped him get through his times. And most common thing is, if I could also leave this message and note, is that it's most likely that you will relapse. And I hope nobody does. I would love for somebody to get it through on the first time. But the thing is to keep on fighting for yourself. There's a lot of pressures that you're letting other people down. And one of the things that I realize now that I'm 50, and I decided to go cold turkey on my last one. I'll go into some tricks to, if you decide to go this way, instead of going to a detox center, to help ease the symptoms of that hell that you'll deal with. That I'll explain in the steps and the step process that I learned going through withdrawals and going cold turkey on my own. But one thing I wanted to communicate was it was to relieve pressure off of parents. And we're going to post an article on research on do's and don'ts, I believe it is, of dealing with somebody with dependencies, ways to communicate, and maybe they can give you a little bit of understanding. I was coming back, and this was 2 years ago. My father was driving me to Dr. Bourne's office, and we actually, after my diagnosis, I went back on opiates because I said, here's a green light. I mean, I'm probably going to be terminal, and my brain is dying off. I could feel every day it's getting more painful. My symptoms are getting worse. I'm not doing this to throw a pity party. I'm just trying to be straight with you. But there is times where it's just unbearable, and I want to give up. I figured, all right, wow, I was almost excited when they told me that they were going to put me back on opiates, because I felt like, all right, my emotional pain is going to go away, and my physical pain is going to be brought down a little bit, and I'm not going to be judged and feel guilty about the dirty stigmatism. I was on the opiates for some time until I went into Dr. Bourne, and we decided to start this campaign, and I had to make a choice if I was going to come in. Not that I am a role model by any means. In order for me to be transparent and tell you and connect with you, that I have to be completely honest about the skeletons in my closet, because if I lie, and that's not fair justice to you. And so, oh, brain freeze. All right, we just took a little bit of a break after I had brain freeze, and we were thinking about actually taking it out, reshooting that storyline. But that gives you an example of what happens day to day, where my mind was going, and my partner Alex just corrected me. This is actually gives you an example. If I didn't stop the opiates, and I made this choice to go on this campaign and this crusade to try to help others by sharing my coping skills, my stories, to parents, loved ones, and patients and other people that are going through. We have to share it all. So sometimes my brain freezes. So then I have to pick up and get a reminder. And since I don't have an actual script that I can read off of. So we made the decision, my cognitive psychologist, Dr. Bourne, and my father. And actually, I saw a relief, because even though I'm in a lot of pain, he just doesn't understand any addictive substance, putting that in. It scares him to death for some reason. And I don't understand why to this day, because he never touched that stuff. And my mother and my grandparents were always as straight as an arrow. So in order for me to, when I made this choice, and this was at this point, in this one session that I brought my father in, Dr. Bourne, my father was concerned about the opiates. I raised the issue about me committing suicide. So I think in the back of his head, he might have been worried about me on one of my down days taking too many pills. But Dr. Bourne took it a different direction and said, well, if we come off the painkillers, again, this is why I respect him so much. You're going to have pros and cons. This is going to be really bad, and you're going to be facing hell for 10 days, but it's not going to kill you, okay? If you are on benzodiazepine, you would have to be in the hospital. If you're an alcoholic, you have to go in, because that'll give you seizures and kill you. But with opiates, you just feel like hell, and it's an understatement. I can't come in there until I'd rather feel more comfortable about you looking up what are the symptoms of hardcore withdrawal from opiate or heroin. Even though I didn't do heroin, I told you Oxycontin is the same thing. It just comes from a pharmacy and a doctor, and heroin could be dirtier and mixed with other stuff. So we made I guess, a team plan, and decided to come off it and roll the dice. And my dad almost came out like I just won the state championships. He's like, you could do it. It's like, pats me on the back. He's like, there's no doubt in my doubt. You're too proud to give into this. And even those words that he meant out of love and compassion, it hurt a little bit. And it was because he didn't understand. It's not about being the toughest guy in the room or to beat this disease. It's first I had to accept. I think what really gave me the strength to get through this was I accepted being an addict. And it's not that I'm running on each corner and going around telling everybody, hey, I'm an addict and I'm proud of it. I've had X amount of time sober. I don't even, a lot of people that are in recovery keep their chips, go to their meetings, and if that whatever works for you, that's not my method that I do. One of the things that helped me got through it was acceptance. Acceptance is truly, and they say, making amends too. I pick and choose some spots of the 12-step program that work for me. I'm honest. I bring a lot of my baggage in, and if I'm in a point of crisis, I have Dr. Bourne that I could share that with. that's not going to hurt him. Where if I'm with my father and I convey to him, hey, I really wish I could have a pain medication or something, he's not going to be able to internalize that. He's going to panic. It's going to only upset him. He's not going to be able to sleep that night. So it's very selfish. So it's very important that you have a therapist or a sponsor or somebody to go from there. Now I'm at, 49 years old, 48 years old, or whatever the age was, and we're in the car, we're going home, and he's getting ready to drop me off. And he's just been through so much because my sister suffers from a similar disease with alcohol. Now that I'm doing this campaign to try to help the world give back without anything in return, all of our apprentices, we have all these great tools at Access, and my sister, my mother, and my father, they are, instead of embracing this, I would think that somebody would, they push it away. They say, just worry about yourself. You're doing good today. That's all you have to do. You can't change this. And it's almost a slap in the face, but I have to accept it. And my father mentioned to me in the car, and it broke my heart. He said, where did me and your mother go wrong? And this is important for you parents that are family members that are watching this, or friends. Where did we go wrong with you and your sister? And I wanted to cry. I'm glad I got glasses on because my eyes are watering right now, because it was 2 years ago, and it's bringing me back to that moment. And I had to tell him, Dad, it's not you. I mean, how many times I have to tell you it's a disease, all right? And me by saying it's a disease, it's not an excuse. It's not you that did it. It's something that happens in the brain. I said, my mom had cancer. We didn't blame ourselves for giving her cancer. And I don't think you should use the disease as a crutch to do the things. Like if I said, hey, I have a disease, I'm an addict, it's okay that I stole my mother's medication. I'm not saying that I let myself off the hook that way. I have to own that and own those mistakes and all the people that I hurt. My father's at a later age now. He's in his 70s. These should be his golden years. And he's dealing with all this trauma from my family. And I can never give him that time back. But that's how our family's built. We stick together and we go through walls for each other. I'm sure a lot of you who are watching this, and family members, or even people that are sick and looking for answers, his first thing is try to get rid of the guilt. The best way to get rid of the guilt is to get sober and try and keep on staying in the fight, and try to do that. Now, so that is the background of the story, because I think we had to set it up. We were talking about setting up this podcast tonight. It's long. It's hard to stay attention to this story, and a lot of people could probably identify with parts of it, but every person that has a dependency issue has a different story behind it. And that's what probably, when we do our online programs, be able to share that and get other different type of support, and from the confidence and the privacy of your own home and the convenience of your own home. So that's our vision for the future for that. If you are thinking about and you can't afford, you don't have health insurance and you don't know where to go, hopefully you have a roof over your head, because 90%, there's only one way to go, is when you become dependent, if you're an alcoholic or an addict, and you're not going to go up. The pain doesn't go away. There's going to be a bottom. And I always say, if there's a bottom here, there's a trap door, it's going to get worse. Hopefully, stop the pain, and it's a lot easier said than done. There's a lot of free support out there, but research it, make sure you're comfortable with it, get in with time. But if you got to do it on your own, these are some things and some tricks that we can go by. So I'm going to go over those step by step.